Hey guys, it's Ariel over here at Nyth. It's a beautiful sunny day, the first we've had in a long time. Hey folks, this is Ariel at Nyth. This is my brand new gray wood stove. As you can see, it is now burning. This is my first fire. Welcome. Today we're going to do a tour of my tiny house. This is the end as you walk up to it. You can see my propane tanks. There are two more small ones under the black cover. That supplies all of my heating, cooking, fuel. Hello folks, here's a summer tour of Nyth. If you can hear that sound really faintly through the open windows, that would be the creek that's down the hill. Over here it's evening now, but my solar panels are keeping this house charged up. I don't need my generator at all. You can see the batteries are at 99.2% right now. I'm assuming that you're here today because you watched my 3rd anniversary video yesterday and want to know more about my tiny house's future home. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, find yesterday's video and watch that, and then you'll be in the know. So, I bought a property to homestead. As I said, I don't mean homestead like I could go live there, prove up on it, and actually get the ground for free. Unfortunately, that's pretty much impossible to do anywhere in this country anymore. So I'm using it to mean the more modern meaning of some kind of more simple, sustainable life, living off the land, producing things for yourself as much as possible, that kind of thing. So just if you're thinking about doing something similar, I'm no pro or expert, but these are some of the things that I thought about and that were important to me as I have been looking over the last year for a place to buy. My number one priority is I wanted a little bit of a warmer growing climate. I love the snow, I love all 4 seasons, I wanted to keep that, but with 8 or more months of winter here and the possibility of frost and snow every single day during the summer, it is very difficult to produce a lot of your own food. So somewhere that was a little bit warmer so that food production was possible was definitely high on my priority list. I knew I wanted to stay somewhere in the Mountain West because I like the mountains. That's just a personal preference. I'm not a Kansas or Iowa person. I've got family there, and I guess it's not claustrophobic, but I miss the mountains when I'm not in them. Finding a place where I could realistically in my lifetime afford to buy property was very important to me.
He caught me off guard again. I'm busy typing. Oh, what a whirlwind weekend we had. We could probably spend 3 hours just talking about that. As most of you can see in the chat, I've been typing away. We had a blast. It was 17 hours of driving to get there, 17 hours coming home. Wouldn't change it a bit. We would do it again. We had a blast. Twin Cedar Farms, Springfield Farms, Homestead. Gosh, I found my daughter's twin. Honest to God, I found my daughter's twin and didn't find her till Saturday night at dinner, sitting there chatting with her, and I'm staring at her going, why does she look so familiar? I finally look at Daryl, I go, why does she look familiar? I ask her if she's Italian, and then I ask her a few other things, and we chat, and that dawns on me. So I get my phone, and I bring up a picture of my daughter, and I go, does this look like you? Yeah. Spitting image. Let me tell you, talk about freaky. Anyway, I love you too, Denise. It was wild. Oh my gosh.
Even had the same last names.
Yeah. Then it didn't dawn on me until coming home on Sunday that I sent Denise a message, Jim and I Homestead, and I go, you won't believe what just dawned on me, but they also have the same last name. Yeah, freaky. So Linda Reich, I know you're in here, and Linda is my real sister. She's in California. Sometimes there are people out there that are lookalikes to our family. It's scary. And this woman looks a lot like Antoinette. That was the scary part. That was wild. We had, it actually was, Victoria, it actually was. Yeah, Twin Strangers on YouTube. Who knew? But we had a riot. We drove in, we left Tuesday, spent 2 nights in Gulfport, went back to Wiggins on Thursday. Most of you saw we did a pre-gathering live stream Friday night. It was what, 4 hours? We had an impromptu 7-year-old's birthday party on our live stream. And you could just tell he was so excited. It was cool. Everybody saying happy birthday to him. We had fun. We had fun. Teresa, you go ahead and lurk all you want, sweetheart. It was up to me, I'd lurk too, you know? But we have a great night tonight. We have a young lady that is off-grid, tiny house. We had the pleasure of meeting her last August in Hannibal. We will get the pleasure of meeting up with her again this August. So, Daryl, let's get her out here and talking.
You think it's time?
Sure, why not? I've talked all weekend.
All right.
Okay.
Say hello.
Hi, folks.
There we go.
So, Ariel, how did you decide to name your channel? And I may not have the pronunciation correct, but Nyth.
I actually pronounce it Nyth, which I have been told is incorrect because it is Welsh, which I clearly don't speak. My only acquaintance with it is the written word, and I have been told that if one is speaking Welsh, it's more properly pronounced something like the Nyth. But at that point, I have been saying it for a while, so I still just say Nyth and have decided at this point it's simply a proper name, and so that's the way that works. Anyway, I picked it because I was just trying to think of a cool, unique house name when I first moved in, and Old English and Welsh are just languages I've always thought were really pretty. And in hindsight, if I'd ever known anyone else was going to be interested in my house, I probably would have picked something easier to spell and pronounce in English.
Well, it's easy enough to spell.
That's true.
But
just not words that people recognize.
No, it isn't. And it's... that's why I find your About page fascinating. That's why I put the entire thing into the promo, was your entire About page here, because your channel name is your house.
The Low Cash Homestead is asking if your camera's in the oven. It kind of looks like it's in the oven.
No, it's right beside the wood stove, actually. Let's see if I can show everyone. Nice, cozy, warm in here. My dog is chewing on his bone right beside me. Set that still again.
I don't know how many of your neighbors we have watching, but I know that we have a lot of people that are not from the snowy country that you are in. Would you share with the folks how much snow you have on the ground right now?
Well, I'm sitting on the floor in my house right now beside my cozy wood stove, and I actually am very plenty warm in here. I have 3 windows open right now, but the high today was about right around 20. It was about -1 last night. This is Fahrenheit. And the snow right now outside my windows out there is on the flat, level, untouched areas. I've got a solid 7-foot snowpack, and where it's been shoveled or plowed, of course, the piles are a little deeper than that.
Good Lord. No, thank you.
So in other words, it's almost up to the eaves of your house.
It's getting close, yeah, because I actually shovel around the house, so those piles are a little deeper. So yeah, if you're standing like out in the driveway itself, yeah, you pretty much can't see anything other than the edge of the roof on up. So all you can see is a little tiny point that's the roof of the house. So
does this add insulation value to your home?
It does, actually. I have some videos on that. I use the snow as a skirting around the base of my house. The house is also very well insulated to start with, and like I said, even with the stove going and being cold outside, I have windows open because, once a wood stove gets hot, it's pretty hot, and there's no way to just turn the thermostat down. So I do not have a problem staying warm in here at all.
Well, obviously your tiny house is sort of almost an RV, but highly modified, I'm going to say.
Yeah, I think people describe it as kind of like if an RV and a traditional house got together and had a baby, that would be a tiny house. So it is on wheels. It is the base of it. The foundation basically is a trailer, a pretty heavy duty one. It's the triple axle trailer. You can't see it at all right now. It looks like a cabin attached to the ground because all that part is under snow. But it is totally road legal. The height and width are all within those dimensions. And so with any large enough vehicle, like a 1-ton pickup, you can hitch up to my house and tow it down the road anywhere in the country. But it is also built like a real house. It is, it's stick built with insulation. It's heavy. It's not the lightweight materials that most RVs are made out of. It's very durable. It's got a metal roof on it. The structure itself should be perfectly fine, for somebody else to keep living in 100 years from now. It doesn't have the shorter life of the really lightweight materials of the average RV.
Well, is this something that you participated in the building of, or you commissioned to have it done, or how did you decide to wind up with what you have?
I participated in the design. I did not participate in the building. I think people who actually build their own houses are super amazing, but my life situation at the time when I moved into a tiny house did not include time to learn how to build a house because it's not something I currently know. I assume it would be possible to learn, but it was not a skill I possessed at the moment. And I also was about to be homeless at the start of Wyoming winter. And since I don't prefer to live in the snowbank itself, I was in a bit of a hurry to get a house. So I did help with, I kind of started with one of the builders' basic layouts, and then I modified things and said, can you make my kitchen bigger? And can you shrink my bathroom really little? Because I don't really care that much about that. And I use my kitchen all the time and do this and add a shelf there, and I don't need this and so on. So I kind of helped design exactly what I wanted. And then their crew of professional builders who, it's an entirely different group of builders working with the company at this time. But when I bought my house, they were a group of ex-Amish gentlemen from Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up. And I was a bit familiar with their work quality, and they actually took this house from being a flatbed trailer to a move-in ready, delivered to me in Wyoming because it was built in Colorado, house in 6 days, which there is no way I could have done.
Well,
Wow.
That's pretty good.
Yes.
Pretty good.
Well, I will let you know that Doug and Stacy are here.
Oh, hey there. Hopefully you guys, maybe your last snow patch is gone. I saw your poor dog was feeling very lonely with being almost out of snow. Burley could share a little bit of snow now. He has some extra here.
There we go. We do have some questions. I do, please, if you have questions, put them in all caps tonight, especially. I may not see them if they're not in all caps. 70 Farms, also known as Sherry, she's our bread queen. Where did you get your wood stove? She cooks on a wood stove, so she wants to know where you got yours.
Mine was actually made by a manufacturer called Gray Stoveworks, which is no longer in business as far as I know, which is kind of sad because I would love to be able to recommend to people a stove I have personal experience with, but I have been overall pretty happy with my stove. The most similar models I know of that are currently available for purchase would be like I think Salamander Stoves has a squirrel model that's very tiny, and I don't know how their name is pronounced. Morso makes a Hobbit model, and that's also very tiny. The dimensions on my stove are, it's 12 inches square on the exterior, and on the inside it's 8 inches. So I cut 7.5-inch logs as my firewood, which is like most people's kindling.
Wow.
Let me see if I can show you here. This little pile right here. This is like most people's kindling. Anyway, that's what fits inside my stove and makes my house very toasty warm.
Looks like very thick pencils. Someone asked, let me see if I could find it now, if it was movable when full. I don't think it would. I don't think that's the question they asked. Low Cash Homestead, what kind of licensing requirements would be needed to tow that? In my state, trailers have to be licensed. Would it have to be licensed as a trailer, an RV, or what?
This one, the builder was actually licensed as an RV manufacturer, so I actually have an RV tag on this trailer. So if I do not have current registration just because I've been parked for going on 5 years now, but in whatever year I would want to next move, I would have to get it registered then, and mine would be registered as an RV. If you are doing a self-built one, you're not going to be licensed as an RVIA manufacturer, and I know lots of people that just register it as a plain trailer, or it can be insured sometimes as a trailer with a load. So there's a little different options there depending how you built and what you're doing, but it does need a license either as a trailer or as an RV, one of the two, if you are going down the road. And as I said, mine is currently expired because, you know, just like if you parked your little flatbed trailer behind your barn for years, you wouldn't bother paying the license fees unless you're going to take it somewhere.
This is your home. Is it movable when it's fully furnished?
It is. I don't know the exact weight with my furnishings in here. When it was towed to me empty, I know it was 10,600 pounds approximately. As I said, this is on a triple axle trailer. I believe each axle is rated for 10,000 pounds, so it should be overbuilt. Burley's trying to join the picture here for that. And yes, it definitely weighs more than that now that I have clothing and dishes and books and all that kind of stuff in here. Towed it across the scales. I can't tell you exactly what it weighs now, but somewhere a little north of 10,000 pounds for sure. How
much wood do you go through in a winter to heat your home?
Firewood?
Yes.
Winter is long here. I have many, many months, and it tends to be very, very cold. We get temps down to like -30 or sometimes lower. And I go through about 1.5 cords of wood in a year, which is one of the advantages of having a very small and well-insulated space. So it takes me more time to chop my wood into my thick pencils because that's more splitting than most people do. But I don't need 15 cords of firewood to get through the year.
True.
So it probably evens out to be about the same amount of work.
Gemini Homestead, do you put up canning? And if so, how do you store it?
I do. Whenever I can grow enough extra of anything beyond what I eat fresh. I also ferment and dehydrate and pickle and so on. But right behind me here, you probably can't see in this camera angle, I have a fairly deep pantry. And then some of my kitchen cupboards, the top cupboard shelves there, which you also can't see, I use as food storage as well. And I have a little storage loft that's behind the camera at the moment, and I do keep food up there. So while I can't store like at least a lot of things, I don't quite have room to store, you know, a full year's supply, which would be the most ideal. I do usually have at least 3 or 4 months worth of food stored in my house. And yeah, anything I can grow here that I can get extra of, I do can or do something with to preserve for the winter.
And Wild and Wonderful is asking if you have ever tried a wood pellet stove.
I have not, because every pellet's, well, 2 reasons. One, you have to buy wood pellets. They don't grow as trees. And I live in the middle of a few million acres of beetle kill pine, which are standing dead, beautiful firewood trees. I know they're not hardwoods, but I don't live anywhere close to hardwoods, so that's kind of a non-existent option here. So I have lots of firewood that I can go cut for free that's otherwise going to burn up in gigantic wildfires, like the one closest to my house this last summer burnt almost 62,000 acres of forest and destroyed 55 homes. So there are lots of trees here, and since I can access them, it doesn't make any sense for me to instead buy pellets. The second reason being a pellet stove usually has a little auger that feeds the pellets into the stove, and that requires electricity, and I am off-grid here, and I do have some electricity, but it's a very, very small power system, and especially in the winter when I would use the stove most, I would like to not use any extra electricity to rely on for staying warm.
Yeah, that's what we use for heat, is a pellet stove. Yep, does take electricity.
So about your electricity, you have a solar system, and then you back that up with the generator. Is that correct?
I do.
Okay, and how big is your solar system, and how big is your generator, and how often do you have to run the generator?
I have 400-watt solar panels. So that's, I guess, bigger than some things, smaller than others. And in the summer, I don't run the generator at all. That is, you know, best case scenario. And worst case is in the very shortest months of the year, or the the months that have the shortest days, I live fairly far north, and I actually live on the north side of a hill, and so there is very limited sunlight in the end of December, and so on the shortest days, the sun will not rise at my house till about 9 o'clock, and it's pretty much dark again by 4. So when you have short days like that, and then when it snows all day, and yes, you can clean snow off the solar panels, but if it's continuing to snow at an inch or 2 per hour, that's kind of pointless. So if I have days like that where there's virtually no sunlight coming in, then, and for multiple days in a row, then I would have to start my generator usually about every 3 days to kind of top the batteries back off and let them catch up so they don't get too depleted.
Very interesting.
Sorry about my dog's backside joining the camera.
Oh, your dog is just fine. If our dog was there, he would take up the whole camera.
Yeah.
So, all right, you have a dog. How much property do you have there?
I do not own the property I live on. I actually do work for the landowners here in exchange for being able to park my house on their property. So one answer is 0. I don't own any of it. But the property I live on is a little over 700 acres. So there's a good bit of space here.
And I know that that you have said that you do some gardening and so forth. Did you have to clear away tree area to do that, or was there already area for you to have a garden in your short window of gardening, which we'll get to later?
Where my house is parked is in a little area that is not an entirely natural clearing, but there was a clearing. This area was logged many, many years ago, and so as part of the remnant of that, this area was left as kind of a clearing, and there's other clearings nearby as well. So I didn't have to clear any trees for the garden. There was, in that clearing, there had grown up a lot of just wild brush, like little wild berry bushes and things like that, and so some of that I did have to clear in order to be able to put a garden in.
Okay, we've got somebody asking, they're wondering where it is you live. I'll let you share that to whatever location you would like to.
I live in the mountains of northern Wyoming, which is a pretty big spot, and right now the snow's really deep, so if somebody creepy wants to come looking for me because people worry about me sharing my location, they're going to have to cover potentially quite a few thousands of miles and maybe get chased by a moose and eaten by a mountain lion before they find my house.
What are some of your favorite things to grow?
Pretty much anything. If you look at a normal list of winter gardening items, those are the things I can grow in the summer here, because we do get frost and potentially snow year-round, including in July and August. If you look up the official last frost date and first frost date for my area, they are 6 days apart. And I have seen snowstorms in that middle of that 6-day actually window. So root vegetables, I can grow almost all of them. Carrots, onions, garlic, beets, leeks, I'm probably forgetting some. And then leafy green things, that's the next big thing. So obviously things like kale and chard and bok choy, those are all pretty cold tolerant. I grow quite a few varieties of lettuces and mustard greens, and I can grow peas most years. If the summer cooperates, I do have frost covers for all of my beds. Sometimes it's warm enough that I can grow things like zucchini or green beans. Sometimes it's not, and it is never warm enough for crops like tomatoes, corn, watermelon, those kinds of
I'd hate not to be able to grow tomatoes. Oh, my lordy. North Star Prepsteader wants to know what you do for work.
I now do a whole combination of things. I've done a whole combination of things my whole life, from milking dairy cows to working at boys' homes to childcare to waitressing. At the moment, I have a lovely variety of baby boy. Can you sit down? I know you want to pace. I know, but because I'm talking, but you're kind of interrupting the camera. I currently do some summer gardening for an elderly neighbor lady. I do winter snow shoveling for quite a few people. As you might imagine, with the amount of snow we get here, that can be a chore, and there's always things that have to be shoveled where you can't use a snowblower, like steps and people's hot tub decks and on the roofs and so on. So I do, especially winters like this, I do a lot of snow shoveling. And then I do some photo and video work for a few other people. I do house cleaning for a couple people. I do some property maintenance, both in exchange for being able to park my house here and for a neighboring property, which is anything from dragging meadows, making hay, fixing fences, to clearing up downed trees, to whatever else you can think of. So it's kind of a very wide variety. And I don't have any, like, at 6:30 a.m. tomorrow, I need to be at this job schedule, which I love.
Cool. Any types of meat that you can raise there?
I would love to raise things like chickens, but I have a gigantic predator population, and I don't think, short of building a concrete bunker that looks like a commercial chicken house, I could get them to grow up without getting eaten first. So I don't actually raise any meat here at the moment. I am, however, able to hunt wild elk. There's quite a few in this area. As a state resident, it's very easy to get an over-the-counter tag, much like white-tailed deer and a lot of the rest of the country. And so a neighbor and I do work together every fall to put up 2 elk, which they're bigger than deer, obviously, and so that provides most of the meat that I eat in the next year.
Well, I was going to ask you about the predators there, if you had any concerns as far as, well, like your dog going outside, or I'm just not familiar with, you know.
What do you do? Pick up the dog and throw it out and hope it lands in a.
So that's a question I get asked very often. It's a little funny to me because, not that it's a funny question, but because I think people are more scared of things they're not so familiar with. Mm-hmm. I have friends who live here who have grown up here their whole life, who are completely freaked out at the idea of, like, I went to Washington, D.C. to visit one of my good friends I grew up with, and they just cannot imagine anyone going into a big city like that, because what if, I mean, these cities have, like, drive-by shootings, and, like, it's just dangerous, and I would be scared to death. And I think it's funny because then the other people I know who have never been in the mountains are equally terrified of bears and mountain lions and so on. And both things obviously have some actual dangers, but I think people tend to be comfortable with what they're more familiar with. But I do have wildlife. I have everything from you know, mouse and songbird size up to, you know, bears, black bears and grizzly bears, wolves, mountain lions, moose. Moose do kill dogs. Canines are a natural, you know, moose have a natural dislike for canines. And so, like with my dog Burley, we have been practicing ever since he was a tiny little puppy that the only appropriate course of action every time you see a moose is to go the opposite direction. Yeah. Wolves and coyotes and such would also kill a dog if they got them out alone, but he's basically always beside me, so that's not really a concern I have. Moose will come right up to a person. They're often docile, but when they're not, they're really not. And I do see people ask me about bears. I do see bears that come through here every now and then. It's usually only once or twice a year that I see one. I know they're around, but they just don't come that close to human houses most of the time, and they've always just gone on their way. I also spend a lot of time backpacking, so I've encountered more bears while in the, you know, deeper into the backcountry than I do here, and thankfully I've never had a bad interaction with one yet. But I think a lot of those, and mountain lions are very elusive. Though my one neighbor did see a mountain lion walking down their fence rail 3 or 4 nights ago, so I know there's one around here. And occasionally I do hear wolves from here, but again, they don't tend to come super close to houses. So there is wildlife, and I wouldn't say I'm fearful of it. I kind of think of things like bears and moose as a little bit like if you're going to walk down the shoulder on an interstate, they're a little bit like semis. They're not out there necessarily, they don't get up in the morning planning to eat you, but they are big and dangerous, and if you're not careful, you're going to get killed. So wow. That's kind of how I think about it. I just try to, you know, be careful we don't leave any food smells outside ever that could attract things like that. And I've been here for quite a while and not had any negative interactions with any of them.
Half Acre Dreams wants to know, how do you store your elk, and do you have a freezer?
I do have a little freezer. You can maybe see it on the top behind there. That's a tiny little one. Obviously not quite big enough to put a whole elk in. That's the one in my house. my neighbor has a big shop he's got a couple chest freezers, and I have one in there, and he lets me store it in there. And like I said, we process the elk together and so on. And so that is where the bulk of it stays for the year, because no, I don't have quite enough freezer space in my house to hold an entire elk.
Are there people in your area there that have, I'm going to use the term livestock, traditional type livestock that people would think of, cows, chickens?
Chickens, not so much, because this whole corner of the state has a lot of predators. We also, for the same reason, don't tend to have stray cats or dogs or anything like that, because anything smaller out there is most likely going to get eaten by something larger. But there is certainly a lot of ranching, so there is a lot of cattle, some sheep, not so much in the mountains here, a little bit more if you get out into the flat areas of Wyoming, and definitely a lot of horses. But there's a lot of beef cattle raised, you know, in the woods right around my house.
Okay.
Someone's wanting to know how you have such good internet out there.
I have a Verizon hotspot, which is sometimes spotty. I was a little concerned about it being steady enough to stream this, because not because it can't be strong, but because I live right on the edge of Verizon coverage. I also live beyond almost every other cell phone coverage. I always have to laugh when I see their ads, that's like Sprint's ads, say there's a 1% difference in coverage. And I'm like, yeah, and I live in that 1% edge. So Verizon is currently, anyway, the only cell phone carrier that has coverage here. The only other internet options would be like HughesNet or a satellite internet. I'm nowhere close to being able to connect to any physical internet connection. There are no other providers in the area, and HughesNet requires like a 2-year contract and to have somebody come install something, and those things get a little complicated when you have a mobile house that you may decide to move soon.
Isn't that what you had to use Saturday?
Yeah, Saturday we used hotspot.
Yeah, that's what Doug and Stacy love, the Verizon hotspot unlimited. Yeah, we finally went out and got one because Daryl wouldn't have been able to do the 6-hour live stream at the Deep South Homestead gathering on Saturday without it, or Friday night.
So,
yeah, it definitely works. It's just it's not the cheapest option, but it's the option I have, so that's what I use.
That's right.
And Wellborn Homestead is asking, got to know what kinds of guns you keep: predators, elk hunting, and personal protection. You keep okay.
My main personal protection thing is I do have a 12-gauge shotgun, which I have only needed to use once in all the years I've lived here, and that was actually for a moose calf who decided to be very aggressive. His mother was very well behaved, but he had spent about a day and a half repeatedly charging me every time I opened the door. He would run right up onto my porch, and my porch is always like 2 feet wide, so it's not a very big space. And so I didn't hurt him, but I just have birdshot in there. It's backed up with slugs in case I would go through that and need something stronger. But for that, just when a moose is a very large creature, and when they have their head turned away because I don't want to get a shot in their eye, a little bird shot in their backside was enough to convince him to move on and quit charging me every time I walked out the door. But I do keep that loaded with shot shells, and then 2 slugs is the final 2 rounds, which I have never needed for anything and hopefully don't, but that's why they're there. And then I have a rifle and such that I don't use most of the year for most things.
Yeah, I think I saw somebody earlier say something about you carried bear spray as well or something.
I do, and if you're not familiar with bear spray because you don't live where there's bears, think of it as like those little mace cans that a lot of women especially will carry in their purses and such. It's like that, except it's a big mace can and it's got a 30-foot spray on it. And so it's a pepper spray that would irritate anything with mucous membranes. So it would be effective against not only bears, but you could theoretically spray a lion or wolf or moose or human or whatever else that has mucous membranes that could be irritated by the pepper spray, just like using mace. And that is what I carry when I'm backpacking and such.
Okay, Faithful Fields Homestead says, you look so young. How long have you been living off grid? I don't know if they think that ages a person or what, but
I did grow up doing a lot of hard work outside. My parents weren't off grid; we had electricity and such. But I am in my 30s, and I have been living here in this exact location in my tiny house for not quite full 5 years, but I'm in my 5th winter here, and so this next summer it'll be 5 full years, and I'll be on to my 6th.
Do you see the fish one?
Yeah, someone asked if you fish.
I don't. It's just a hobby or sport or whatever you'd like to call it that has never really interested me personally. I have a lot of friends who fish, and I enjoy going along on fishing trips. I prefer to take pictures and let them do the fishing. And there is certainly fish around here in the streams, and if I needed to fish personally for my sustenance, I could. But I have friends who would prefer to do it, so I would rather take pictures of them catching the fish, and then we both have more fun.
Okay, Ariel, just sit back here for a minute. We're going to get a trivia question brought up here, so we'll bring the rules up. I know we got some new people in the chat here, so we'll let Smudge explain it here, and then I'll answer any questions, and we'll get a trivia question asked. So just sit tight and relax.
See a time again, and we have to have some rules for this, so they are as follows. Number 1, you can only win once every 4 weeks. Number 2, you must be the first person to answer the question correctly in the chat window as it appears embedded on the screen here. Your chat window may have a different order. And number 3, you have to send an email to twofamilyhomestead@gmail.com. Send us your mailing address so we know where to send your winnings. Good luck.
Okay, for those of you that are new here, we try to get a couple trivia questions every week with our various guests, and just very quickly again, you can only win it once every 4 weeks. You must be the first person to answer a question correctly in the chat window as it appears on the screen here. If you're looking at the screen, you'll see that is the official order chat that we use. Your chat window will be in a different order. That's just the way that the PCs and phones and everything else work. So the first question, now I have to get that pulled up here. Let's slide this over. Will be, and these are questions about our guests, and they are the ones that have initiated these questions, so we just didn't make them up from pulling things out of the air here. So, what breed is my dog Burley? What breed is my dog Burley? And y'all got to see Burley sitting beside her in the chat here.
Well, Jerome, yeah, sort of. Winter's Walks. English Shepherd. Exactly. You got it. Winter's Walks. Got it.
Okay, Winter's Walks, you need to send us an email. Send it to twofamilyhomestead@gmail.com. Please give us your mailing address. Sherry, what are they winning tonight? I forgot to tell them.
Oh, wait, Vanna doesn't have her information ready here. Tonight, for this question, I'm sorry. I'm honest, man. Today, I don't have anything together. You will get a hardcover book from Baker Creek Seeds, The Heirloom Life Gardener, written by Baker Creek owners Jerry and Emily Gettle, valued at $30. So if you email us at twofamilyhomestead@gmail.com with your name and address and tell us you were the book winner, so I know, I will get that information sent to them and they will send you a book.
Okay, and we'll have another question here in just a little bit. Let me also get something else dialed up here. Now, I'm hoping that this works because we haven't had a chance to test this since we got back and I set everything up quickly today.
I'm reading a joke that I know it was Doug typed. Doug just put in the chat here. Doug, are you going to say that in August for us?
But we're gonna try to open up the phone line here. If anybody would like to talk to Ariel directly, ask her some questions. Just say hello and wish her well, or tell her she's crazy for living out there in the middle of a snow forest. And I have a question for her. How close were you to the fires? And do you feel that your house is in a real threatened area?
The biggest one closest to me this year was maybe 30 miles south as the crow flies, and I did not feel threatened by that particular one just because our wind basically always comes out of the west here and blowing toward the east, and it started just to the east of me, plus it was on the other side of a fairly big river, so there was really very little danger it could turn around and come back to exactly where I am. But there is a lot of very dead, very brittle, very flammable timber on the side of me where if a fire started it could come this way. I do my best to keep continually kind of expanding, using up all the dead and flammable stuff in an ever widening circle out from my place here, and I do keep things as green and moisturized as I can around my house. But realistically, if a big fire was headed this way, what I would do is hitch up to the house
before you go cracking that thing open.
This is Daryl. Who's calling, please?
Third-time caller, long-time listener.
Third-time caller, long-time listener.
You couldn't tell by the voice in the background?
Oh, let's get ready to rumble. That's my favorite off-grid girl living in a tiny house. Ariel, that fine Nyth.
Well, let's see if she has figured out who you might be. I know.
Oh, she knows.
Not sure if I do, actually.
Oh, yes, you do.
Oh, now you done gone and hurt my darn feelings.
You'll see him in August. How's that?
I don't know. He didn't invite me. Plus, I told him he needs to do it in January.
Didn't invite me.
August is like my 2 weeks of summer. I have to be here.
You're not coming down in August, are you?
I don't know. I would love to be there, but it is a really tough time of year for me because that is my few weeks of summer, and I'd rather come in January. The snowdrifts can take care of themselves for a while.
Come on down. You can come anytime.
So if we all supply her with vegetables, she'll come?
Yeah, we got to move the conference to January.
That may be tough.
Yeah, just calling in, just, for anybody who is watching this show tonight and hasn't checked out Ariel's channel, make sure you go watch her channel. She's doing the thing, real deal, living out there, and just good peeps with some good fortitude. So,
well,
good person to watch and get information from.
And for those of you in the chat here that are maybe don't recognize the voice, maybe you've never had the opportunity to
I guess we didn't tell who the caller was.
Just old dumb Doug from Off Grid with Doug and Stacy.
Said Amish guy.
Busting people's live chats and snooping around the internet.
So, Doug, how have you been? We kind of missed you here this past week, and we thought you might make an appearance.
Yeah, they were all talking about the Jacks tournament and everything.
Yeah, I knew that old Pratt family was going to be sliding down there, so I don't want to steal any thunder from their big 14-hour drive.
Well, if they got there in 14 hours, I want to know how.
I think it was about 14, wasn't it? 12, 14 hours, I think they said.
From Michigan, theirs would have been at least 17. Just the drive alone.
Yeah, I'm not
just
sure.
The drive alone.
I just saw them posting some drive videos and stuff. So.
Yeah.
It was a long drive.
Yes, it sure was. But okay. So
we're talking about fine Nyth. We need to be talking about fine Nyth, living in a tiny house with, what have you got now, 20 feet of snow up there? I mean, holy moly.
Pretty close. We've had almost 500 inches of snowfall, but when you have winters where the snow stays on the ground, there's a difference between snowfall and snowpack because what's on the ground keeps compacting and so on. So we got about 7 feet on the ground. So you guys need to come out here and, check this out in the winter. Or maybe in the middle of summer when you all are too hot and sweaty there.
Yeah, I'm actually going to take down our hardest day on the Homestead in 7 years video because I'm just embarrassed by it now. So.
But you get wet, heavy snow. I get very, very dry, fluffy snow, and even though there's many, many feet of it, it is way easier to move than that wet, heavy stuff.
You see what I mean, folks? I mean, did you just see how she did that? She is just so sweet, just good people. You know, just making up excuses for my snow.
And if you guys don't watch Doug and Stacy, which I assume probably everybody here has heard of, you should go check out their channel because they do all kinds of cool stuff. And I first found them because I wondered what an Amish guy was doing on YouTube, because I grew up in the heart of Amish country, and I know that Amish guys are not on YouTube. And so I had to check them out. And then I was like, oh, these awesome folks are doing like everything I care about.
Yeah, and even your dad and I dress quite a bit alike.
Yeah, Doug's kind of like my dad's twin. I got a photo of them together this past fall.
I'm from Georgia. Who's that Doug guy? Oh, don't worry about it. Who's that? Twin Cedar Farm? No. Kinfolk Farm of Georgia? Oh, don't you worry about it. It ain't nothing. Worry about Fine Eyes. It's all about Fine Eyes. Check out her channel. She got a good, really been putting up a lot of videos lately. I've been watching her. And look at that. She's gaining traction, more views, more video views. Channel's growing. Good job.
Thanks, Doug.
You guys, I'll let you guys get back to it. I'm watching right here, and just wanted to say hey, and we appreciate you. And you too, family, for putting on these great interviews every Monday night.
No problem. We love to do it, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. It's always a pleasure to have you watching and
all right,
joining
we'll see you guys. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you in August.
Okay, and for those of you who don't know, I can only take one call at a time. So if you tried to call while Doug was on the phone, I had to refuse the call. So I know we had a couple. Feel free to call back in. The line is open right now. But if I do have somebody on the phone, I can only take one at a time. So, all right. Well, we're waiting for them to get the numbers redialed. Oh, here we go. This is Daryl. Who's calling, please? Hello, this is Daryl. Who's calling, please?
Hi, this is Jim Behrman from Whitecourt, Alberta, Canada.
Well, hi, Jim Behrman. How are you this evening?
I'm doing good. Just waiting on work. Hi, Ariel.
Welcome.
It's a little bit different than talking to you over Facebook.
I'm not used to that's why I don't recognize people's voices. I only see like YouTube names and like things they type. I don't know what people actually look like or sound like.
Very true. I can't believe I actually got through. I just want to say thank you for everything that you do, and I love your videos. And even though we've never met in person, I think of you as a good friend, because your videos helped me out through a lot of tough times, and I really wanted to say thank you, and I really appreciate it. I love you.
Awesome. That's so wonderful to hear.
But I will let you go. I had to chime in. I'm a little nervous.
It's awesome to hear from everybody. That's why I do the videos. If nobody wanted to watch them, I'd just, take more pictures of critters or something instead.
In case you can't really figure out who I am, I think it was last winter, you were talking about how much you love chopping wood. And I was the one that agreed with you, and how I used to go to my dad and I and my family, we built a cabin on this fellow's trap line. And that from the age of 7 until I think 17, every year, whenever we'd go out there, that's what you'd catch me doing. And
I do enjoy it. I like physical work where when I'm doing something, I can like clearly see I started with that pile and now I have this pile. It's just so, there's something so satisfying when you can really see what you accomplished.
Yes, I agree. And actually, since the saw kicked back on me, I haven't really done a whole lot of woodwork, but that's more kind of trying to, horse bucks you off, you get back on. I just haven't got back on yet.
That's kind of understandable.
I wanted to say yeah, but I just wanted to say thank you, and I love Burley. He's great.
You sleep right. Nobody can see him now, so it's not
outside right now. I don't see him in the video. You must have let him outside or something. Oh, okay.
He's sleeping right down here where nobody can see him. He's out of the camera. He finally isn't blocking the camera with his tail. We went on a good long hike. We covered about 6 miles earlier today, so he's ready to nap.
Oh, yeah. I would imagine so. But anyway, I love you, dear. You take care, and I'll keep watching.
Too. Watch out for those saws.
Talk to you again. Take care.
All right. Thank you for calling. So I take it you've talked with him before. I did not recognize the name.
Chatted online. I have not actually spoken to him.
So.
Yeah,
when you're waiting for callers, can I answer a question?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So way back, I know I'm missing a bunch of them. I saw somebody say, what's my favorite animal to take pictures of? And what have I photographed this winter? I photographed pretty much everything I see. The weather, the birds, the moose, my dog, my house, pretty much all that. So pretty much everything. But my favorite animals to photograph are ones that face me and pick their heads up. Because when you're photographing wildlife, you would not believe how much time things spend with their heads down and their butts towards you. So my favorite are ones that look at me.
Okay, and the Citystead is asking, what is the meaning of your channel name? So I'll let you go through it this time.
You mustn't have been here right at the store. I guess maybe I didn't say what it meant. Nyth is Welsh, but what it translates to in English is my nest. So that's the name of my little tiny house here. And then it became the name of my channel and a whole bunch of other things, I guess.
Okay, I'm just glancing back through here, see any other questions. I know, folks, if you would, please capitalize your questions. Make them all capitals. That way it makes it just a little bit easier for us to pick them out. And while we're doing that, another question for you. Do you have any idea what the elevation is where you live?
Yes, I'm right about 6,400 feet above elevation. So 6,400 feet, not above elevation, above sea level. So not super high. I am on the side of a mountain. The mountains go a lot higher. I'm kind of toward the base of it, but I am in the mountains and definitely not at sea level. See, somebody asked if I raise honeybees. That was something I did growing up with my parents. I don't have any here because kind of like raising chickens with the bears, I would have to have a massive enclosure to keep my bees from having their hives ripped apart. And I don't really care to risk attracting a bear with a food source right up to my house. If it wasn't for that, I absolutely would have bees, and I hope to have them again someday, just not right here, right this moment.
North Star Prepster is asking if you feel nested.
I guess I do feel pretty nested. I guess a little bit like birds. They don't just, people say, well, what can you do in a tiny space? You know, I'm like, I do everything I did when I lived in any other space. I go outside and do interesting things. So yeah, kind of like birds come back to their nest just for a few specific things. I eat here, I sleep here. Hang out here in the evenings, that kind of thing. But otherwise, I spend a lot of my life outside, either summer or winter. So yeah, I guess that's pretty well nested.
Okay, and somebody's asking, how long would it take for you to hook up your home and move it away in case of a fire or something?
Right now, it would take a little while to move it because there's a lot of snow in the way. But when there's that many feet of snow in the way, there's virtually no chance of having a wildfire. So right at the moment, it would take a lot of work to move it because many tons of snow would have to move in order to be able to pull it out of here. But in the summer, the only thing blocking it from moving is 2 of my little flower boxes that kind of make my summer house skirting. And so realistically, those could be pushed out of the way in, I don't know, 5 minutes. The main thing I would have to do is rearrange some stuff in my house here because I don't move all the time. I do have like glass dishes and such on shelving that would be prone to falling off because I don't keep it set up permanently for moving. So I would just have to get all that stuff down off the shelf and pack it in a box on the floor so it didn't all shatter. But I could move the home in a few minutes.
Do you move the home often, or has it just been still for 5 years?
Not quite. The very first winter, I actually lived a little bit downhill from where I live now because I moved in the winter and there was too much snow to get it into this location. So I lived for like half a year there. And then the next spring when the snow melted, pulled it into this clearing. And I have been here ever since. And it's a pretty awesome spot. And as long as the landowners are okay with me continuing to be here and that continues to work, I will probably be here for a few more years. But I could move it all the time. And I have friends who travel, you know, on an almost daily basis with their tiny houses. So that is possible. It's just not what I have been doing.
We have a question. What is the temp there now? Since you have your stove going.
Oh, the temp inside? It's 82, and I have this window right beside me that you can't see wide open because I'm actually sweating sitting in here, and there's 2 other windows open because 82 is a little hotter than I actually like my house.
But the outdoor temperature is?
The outdoor temperature, can't quite see the thermometer from here, so I can't tell you positively because it's dark out there now. But I think it's supposed to be right around 1 or 2 tonight, and it's not quite there yet. So it's probably 9 or 10 out there. The high today was around 20 degrees, so something like that.
And Holly Wells is asking, what is going on with the other property recently purchased?
It is sitting there under the snow and doing nothing, kind of like a lot of things around here. It is a little less snowy than here, but it's also in an area that gets a lot of snow. And my current plan is still, I have a video with lots more details on this that take too long to go into here, but my plan is still what I discussed there, to stay here for at least a few more years as long as something doesn't change with my ability to park in this spot, and continue to do the jobs that I currently have because I live in this area at the moment, have contacts here, and have all of my work here, and so on, so that I can save up money so that I can do some of the other more infrastructure projects I would really like to do when I move there full time.
Do you have to maintain or change out the tires regularly, even though your house is just sitting there?
No, they are hidden completely by the snow right now and by the flowers in the summer. And the house is not resting on them. It is resting on corner jacks on the 4 corners. If I stay here for enough years, as you probably know, even sitting inside a tire shop on a shelf, rubber does eventually deteriorate. So if I stay here for enough years before moving, or wherever else I go, if I then sit there for enough years before moving, at some point I would need new tires, just because of the way rubber does dry rot over time, even if it's inside a building. But other than that, I don't have to do any regular maintenance to them now.
Yeah, Doug is reinforcing the temperatures out there, saying it's a dry cold.
It is a dry cold because nothing can really be wet when it's like minus 25. It's not even possible to spill your coffee. If you go to my channel, you can see a video where I did the whole, like, you know, throw boiling water up in the air and it all freezes before it hits the ground. So yeah, it's a very dry cold. If you're not used to that and you go somewhere like that, you'll probably find that your skin is very dry. You might get nosebleeds and such while your body adjusts to that condition. Even when it's not snowing and it's sunshiny, like today when it's 0 in the morning, I think it was -1 when I woke up, you'll see like glittery diamonds in the air just because any possible moisture or humidity that's in the air has frozen solid. And even though there's a blue sky and it's not snowing, the air just glitters, which I think is beautiful because it's all frozen.
Have you ever sold any of your pictures to magazines?
I have. I sold some photos and videos, not a whole lot. I do sell a lot of stock photography, and I don't always know where those are going to because another agency handles those sales for me. I was a little bit excited to have a 2nd place photo finish in Wyoming Wildlife Magazine this year because there's a lot of good wildlife photographers in this state. And I've actually sold some video footage to the Weather Channel and such, and a few other random places. So I don't sell a lot of that kind of thing, but sometimes.
Okay.
I know I'm missing questions over here.
I think we covered most of them. Trying to glance back through here, folks. The phone line is open. You really don't have to be bashful, be shy. It's not that bad. It
Well,
makes
I see people asking about links. Nyth is Welsh for my nest, and it's the name of my house, and it is spelled FYNYTH, and you can find me under that name on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Minds, Gab, pretty much any social media you can think of. And there's a blog too. But if you just type in FYNYTH, you can probably find me pretty much anywhere.
The city is asking what the size is of your tiny home.
Oh, good point. It's about 170 square feet in here. The trailer, long ways, is a 24-foot trailer, on the exterior. And side to side, it is, what's the legal limit? 8 foot 6 inches on the outside. So that includes like the edge of the eaves and all of that. And come in from there, and you have the house wall, and come in from there. Come in from there, you have the interior wall, etc. So the camera angle isn't quite wide enough here. I have kind of long arms, but I can almost touch both walls on the inside, but not quite. And yeah, it's about 170 square feet of interior space here, unless you count my sleeping loft. I do sleep in a loft up there, and then it would be like 220, something like that.
And another question was, what was the biggest challenge in building your home? And I know we talked a little bit about this earlier, and you had it built, but go ahead and explain some of that. Well, if you can, just remember that. Let me get this phone call here. This is Daryl. Who's calling, please? Hello.
Hi, yes. I have a question for Ariel.
Hi there.
She can hear you. Go right ahead.
Oh, fantastic. Hi, Ariel. This is Winter from Winter's Watch. So I actually won the little prize because I know everything about you. I watch you all the time. So anyway, my question for you, it's not about your home or anything. It's just about you. What I want to know is, I know that while you shovel snow, you're like me, you like to listen to audiobooks while you're doing anything, And I want to know, what audiobook are you listening to right now while you shovel you and your neighbor's snow?
Oh, right at the moment. So I usually have several going. I usually have a physical copy of a book I'm in the middle of. And then I usually have an audiobook going plugged into I've got a little portable speaker so I can carry it around outside while I am snow shoveling, like put it in my pocket or use it while I'm cutting firewood or gardening or whatever. And then I have a separate one usually going in the van because I listen to CDs in there anytime I have to drive somewhere. So I think I'm reading Root Cellaring at the moment is my physical hard copy. The one I'm in the middle of in the van is, I think it's called American Heiress. I'm actually terrible at remembering titles. It's about the story of, now y'all are going to hear my antique clock counting the hour. It is, I am in mountain time, so it's earlier for me probably than for a whole bunch of you. There's nowhere a way to turn it off because it's an antique wind-up clock. Anyway.
I know, it's excellent.
I think it's called American Heiress. It's the story of Patty Hearst, who was a little before I was born, but she was kidnapped, and probably anybody older than me remembers the story. And then on my mobile one, I am listening to The Heart and the Fist, which is a story of a humanitarian and soldier. I love reading anything on health and nutrition and gardening and all of that kind of stuff. And otherwise, I like to go to the library and just pick some random nonfiction book about somebody or something I have never heard of and learn about it. So like I said, Patty Hearst was before my time. I'd never heard of her. I just picked it up and thought I'll learn about something new. So that's what I'm listening to right at the moment. And if you are curious, I do have an account on Goodreads. If you look up Goodreads, and Ariel, I've got.
I will do that. Oh my word!
Books on there that I really like. Because I go through about a dozen new books every month and have since I was like 6 years old.
Yeah. Okay. And so just so you know who I am, also. I'm Winter Avalon, and my dog's name is D'Artagnan, and so we've talked about his name and all that.
I just saw this beautiful picture just the other day, or yesterday, this morning, whatever that was.
Exactly, that's the one. So I just wanted you to be able to touch base and know who I was. But anyway, excited to see you live. I'm so glad they did this with you. Everyone needs to know who you are and that you're out there. You're brilliant.
Well, thank you. I hope you and he have a lovely time and enjoy your snow shoveling and book listening and whatever else you're up to.
Yes, I will do. All right, you take care and thank you. Thank you
are very
family for doing this.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you for calling. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, back to the question here, which I saved. What is the biggest building challenge in building your home? The biggest challenge in building your home?
The biggest challenge building my home. This wasn't really the building, because as we discussed earlier, I didn't build the physical structure, but it kind of related. The bigger challenge for me was going off-grid at the start of a Wyoming winter. If you live somewhere really cold and snowy, I would recommend doing it at a slightly warmer time of the year than the end of November. But that's what I did, and I survived. And a lot of people ask about what was hard about going tiny or any of that. It wasn't, because I didn't have to figure out the logistics of how many 2x4s needed to go down this wall to make that stable, and how to attach a metal roof securely and any of that. So like I said, I think people who do build their own houses are terribly cool, and I kind of wish I could say I did, but I didn't. So for me, it was figuring out some of the more off-grid stuff, how to wire solar panels into batteries, into a generator, into outlets, so I can plug my laptop in and do things and so on. And it was interesting, actually, when I thought about going off-grid, for me, it was kind of like an automatic, like, oh, off-grid people have solar or whatever else. And I don't have an on-grid option where I'm parked, so that's partly the reason for it. Ways from any ability to connect to power or anything like that. But I hadn't really thought about that one could just not have electricity in your home. And Doug and Stacy have actually really inspired me in that. And so as some of my components start to wear out over the next however many years, I may actually work toward going more that route and having even less power or whatever here, and doing more things just without it. But that was the bigger challenge for me, is figuring out how to do all that stuff. And I did have a friend with who's a building contractor who could come over and double check stuff and look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's backwards, which is helpful for me because I don't know these things. So I had to like read things and look over it and check it and double check it and triple check it, because it's not just an automatic skill for me. So that was kind of the biggest challenge for me. I don't know if that quite answers the question as far as building the house.
Well, it certainly did for me. I hope it did for them. Sherry, did you catch a couple more there?
I'm chatting with Stedhomer. They left something on the milk bones. I said I haven't been downstairs. Sorry.
Okay.
See what other questions I see.
I was going to say, I saw a couple go by as I was checking out some of the other stuff here, and I'm trying to trace back and find them here real quick.
I see lots of people commenting about snow and not needing it, and not needing snow shovels and stuff, and liking your warm climates. Just remember that when it is a high of 72 and no humidity here in the summer for me, and you all are sweating.
That's true.
And I think somebody asked, and I didn't. This may be a little bit off from what they asked, but something about, do you have equipment or something to take care of the snow other than a shovel? Does your vehicle have a plow on it, or?
No, my vehicle does not. I do shovel everything around my house by hand. The lane to get out to the main road is actually cleared by a neighbor, which he's got a tractor snow blower and a snow plow, and that's part of what he does as a job. And he actually has some other shoveling responsibilities, and when it snows a lot, I go do his shoveling for him, so he has time to come plow my lane. So that's worked out to be a good trade. So I do shovel everything by hand around here, but for the long lane, if I couldn't work out some kind of deal like that, I'd be parking at the road and snowshoeing in, because I could not hand shovel the entire lane.
Okay. What is your favorite flower and color?
Ooh. My favorite color is probably blue. You can't really see because it's getting pretty dark in here now, but if you look around my house, the only color in here really, other than the neutral whites and browns and creams and whatever that all the wood and such is blues. That's probably my favorite. My favorite flowers, I like all of them, but if I had to pick, it might be the white wild columbine that grow in the mountains here. But I do really like all flowers. And if you go to my channel or Facebook or wherever and find Instagram, find some of the summer pictures, you'll notice I do have a lot of flowers around here. Most of them are edible too. I put flowers in my salads and all kinds of things.
And,
go ahead.
And Danielle Yoder is asking, I understand you were homeschooled, and do you have a big family?
I do not personally have kids, if that's what you're asking, but yes, I was homeschooled, and I am the oldest of 7 children, so that's big or small, depending where you're from. I grew up around a lot of families that had like 12 or 14 kids, so I didn't grow up thinking we had a big family, but 7 kids, 9 people in the family, I guess, is big for a lot of people these days. And yes, I was homeschooled. My mother, well, she's just wrapping up finishing schooling my baby brother, actually. Now he's just graduating, so she has been teaching school for a very long time.
And you said you were originally from Pennsylvania, is that correct?
That's correct. That is where I grew up and where a lot of my family still is.
S. Oak is saying, are you able to walk around at night safely?
Yes. I do walk around at night. In the winter, if you've ever been somewhere everything is literally covered in white snow, even when there's no moonlight at all or just a sliver moon, like it doesn't have to be a full moon, things are bright outside. It's always actually a little bit shocking when the snow finally melts in the spring and you go to having bare dirt and you go to drive somewhere at night even, and you realize you can't see anything outside of your headlights. So in the winter, you can see a good ways. I can go out there on even a new moon night and with just the starlight, again, because I'm at a high elevation and there's pretty clear air up here and we're just that many thousand feet closer to the stars, I guess. With snow on the ground, I could see an animal moving from a long ways away. In the summer, I've also done night hiking and such. I try to be a little bit cautious about what I do and where, and make noise so I don't surprise an animal. Around my house in my immediate area, I do have a couple little solar-powered motion detector lights kind of around the clearing here, so that if I'm outside or if an animal is, one of us should kick them on and we shouldn't surprise or startle each other.
Okay, Ariel, let's take another quick break here for another trivia question. Give you a chance to relax a little bit here, and then we'll come back and maybe for a few more minutes. I know we've processed your time here for over an hour already, and you've just been absolutely wonderful. And I know people here are absolutely just enthralled with you. We've got over 100 people in the chat right now. They're all having a good time. And somebody is asking, were you near New Albany, Pennsylvania?
No, I grew up in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, which most people know is the heart of like Amish tourist country. My family was not Amish. I'm sure that's the next question I'll get. I did grow up in a very conservative home. My family background is mostly Old Order River Brother, and you can look up a brief description of that on Wikipedia or something if you want. But I did grow up around a lot of Amish and Mennonites and similar. Plain people would be a term those groups use to refer to themselves, as in they live a plain lifestyle, a simple lifestyle. So that is where I grew up, and my parents live just a little distance from that area now. And my ancestors had settled there, fleeing persecution in Europe and wanting to live their religious beliefs the way they wanted, like 8 or 9 generations ago. So I'm related to a huge, gigantic portion of the population of Pennsylvania, because most of them stayed there and did not move to Wyoming.
Okay, I'm going to get this queued up here, so we'll be right back with you.
Okie doke.
Well, hi, folks. It's trivia time again. And we have to have some rules for this, so they are as follows. Number 1, you can only win once every 4 weeks. Number 2, you must be the first person to answer the question correctly in the chat window as it appears embedded on the screen here. Your chat window may have a different order. And number 3, you have to send an email to twofamilyhomestead@gmail.com. Send us your mailing address so we know where to send your winnings. Good luck.
Okay, so Sherry, what are they planned for this time?
I have a immersion blender cookbook.
Immersion blender cookbook is the prize this time. So, in this one, I'll tell you, everybody in here is pretty sharp here this evening. So I don't know how long this one's going to last. If everybody's ready, we're going to bring it across right now. How many months of the year do I have snow on average? How many months of the year do I have snow? Carol Wilk. Carol Wilk was the first one to have the number 8 show up here. So, Carol, you need to send us an email, tfamilyhomestead@gmail.com, and send us your mailing address, and we'll get your prize out to you.
There we go.
All righty. So we'll leave the phone line open for just a little bit longer here.
Let me make a quick clarification on that. 8 months is the normal amount we have snow on the ground where it stays white without it leaving. I saw somebody put 12 months. It is true that it does snow 12 months a year. We've had snowstorms that are usually somewhat brief and do melt fairly rapidly on the 4th of July, in the middle of August, and so on. So yes, there is snow 12 months a year, but as far as how long the ground is actually covered with solid snow so you can't see it, that's usually about 8 months a year. I saw somebody ask, can my van move the house? No, it cannot. At a little over 10,000 something pounds, you'd need like a 1-ton truck, probably preferably a diesel for just controlling the towing weight. I do have a friend who lives just around the corner. If I had like an emergency need to move the house because of a wildfire or something, who does have one I could use. But if I was going to make a further move, I would just rent a vehicle. It doesn't make sense necessarily for me to drive a truck that big that I don't otherwise need for many years when I'm not moving my house. But no, my van can't quite. It could tow a small trailer, but not my house.
So how far are you from, I'm going to say your local grocery store? Obviously you can't grow your food as much as I'm sure you would love to be able to do. So I'm sure you do have to make frequent trips to the grocery store.
I'm about 13 miles from the closest town. It's a small town. I'm about 90 miles, 2 mountain passes from the closest Walmart. So if you're thinking about a Walmart-sized town or a Walmart-containing sized town, I'm about 90 miles from that. But from a small town with grocery stores, I'm about 13 miles. And I usually have to go through town at least once a week for something else. Like the one house I clean involves getting to the other side of town, so I have to go through town for that. So I have heard people say, oh, well, the one problem with a tiny house is that you have to go to the grocery store every day to get food because you can't store anything. That is not true. You can, it just depends what you prioritize storing. And I like food and I love to cook. And if you check out my channel, you can see cooking videos and such. Probably most of you are familiar with that. And I do store a lot of things here. If you locked me in my house right now, I could eat for several months. I would run out of fresh things, obviously, but I have plenty of food in here that I would not be starving anytime soon.
So another question that has come to mind here. You have, I'm sure, composting toilet and so forth for your disposal. Well, how do you handle that when there's 7 foot of snow on the ground?
Well, that's really easy. Compost freezes solid. Nothing stinks or smells when it is frozen. So, but I have 3 compost bins actually. 2 are rotating every other year with my veggie scraps and weeds from the garden and such like that. And then I have 1 dedicated to my composting toilet waste, and it's not very complicated. I just dump it out there. It doesn't really compost any further until it warms back up, but I can just dump it in the pile and it freezes solid. And not that a composting toilet stinks in the house anyway, in case you were wondering that, but even when you dump it outside, then it just freezes solid and it just is basically inert until it thaws out again and then can go back to breaking down, because most compost, the microbes and such that work in there aren't really doing anything when it's below 0.
Well, I'm sure that the terrain out there is so different from what most people in here are used to having. I'm guessing that even what we would consider to be typical weeds, they may not even exist out there. I don't know if you have things like dandelions, or do you have things like raspberry bushes or blueberry bushes?
Not blueberries. We have wild huckleberries here. That are they're in the same family as a blueberry, but there's no blueberries that grow here as far as I know. I think it's a little too cold for them. But I learned when I first started hiking around the mountains after moving here that a lot of plants have an amazing amount of variability in what they can survive. And if you look up a plant, look it up in a guidebook, it will, you think, oh, this looks like something I knew growing up in Pennsylvania. If it was whatever, a dandelion in Pennsylvania, you look up a flower ID book, and it's like, oh, this is either the mountain dandelion or the western dandelion, and that's pretty much how everything goes. Not everything grows here, but I do have a lot of the same weeds. I eat them. You can make dandelion flowers into cookies and all kinds of things. So yeah, I do have things like dandelions, and there's a few thistles that grow here, and nettle, which I also eat, and I guess a lot of the same weeds that I was familiar with in Pennsylvania, but it's more some of the cultivated things that don't so much grow here in the cold. But there are a lot of things that do, and it's amazing as the snow starts to melt off, even high in the mountains where the snow doesn't melt off till the very end of summer. The minute it's gone, there's already little happy green plants springing up their leaves and blooming and dying and reseeding within a couple weeks before they all freeze solid again. It's kind of amazing what plants can do. I think I saw somebody ask, what state am I in? I mentioned that earlier. I am in Wyoming, the northern mountain part of it. If you have driven through I-80 in Wyoming, that is flat and dead and deserty and windy. And the far northern part is very mountainous and very much the opposite of that stretch.
What are your favorite backpacking trips in your region?
Ooh, I can't tell anybody my favorites, and they'll get crowded with people. No, I don't think probably a gigantic crowd's going to do a lot of the ones I've done. There's too many to list. I live near the Teton Range, the Wind River Range, the Wyoming Range, the Salt River Range, the Snake River Range, the Grays River Range, and then if you go just a little bit further away, there's one side or the other, there's like the Sawtooth Range in Idaho, the Beartooth Range, and so on. And I have done hikes in pretty much all of them, and I have yet to ever walk anywhere in the mountains that I thought was ugly.
Wellborn Homestead, Tim Valerie said it has to be lonely there. I don't know. I don't think that would be so lonely.
People say that. I could see that not everyone would enjoy it. I'm a little bit more of an introvert naturally, I think. I like my peace and quiet, but I also have friends here. I think that's one thing a lot of people don't realize because they don't show up in every single video I make, because every time I have a friend over and we just chat for the evening, I don't film it. You can certainly find friends here in photos and videos and such, but I do have good friends here. I have some that I grew up around that now we live in very scattered parts of the globe that we stay in touch via, phone or email. I really enjoy spending one-on-one time with somebody, going for a hike or, going for a 6-day backpack or eating food. We do a lot of eating food, things like that. And I really enjoy that. And then I also enjoy having the peace and quiet and time by myself. And of course, Burley, who's still sleeping away because he's decided I'm boring talking to the computer, is a lot of fun to have around here. And I feel really blessed to have had a lot of really good, close friends in my life, some currently near and currently far. But I always feel like I don't even have enough time, as much time as I would like to be able to keep up as well as I would like with all of those friendships. I certainly do not feel lonely.
Daniel, Goddess My Judge, is asking, how was the weather in late April there?
Late April, that is what is called mud season. That is when the 7 feet of snow that is out there right now is working at melting, and it looks exactly like you would imagine. Everything is muddy. And as far as, we're often still getting some new snow. It's usually a little warmer snow and melting more quickly at that point. And we have warm days and cold days and, windy days and sunny days. And so it's very variable, but that's also true of mountain weather in general. People joke that if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes, it'll be something different. But it's definitely still cold. If you were going to be in northern Wyoming in April, you would want to bring clothing and gear equipped for snow. But it may also be sunshiny, and you could be in shorts and flip-flops.
Do you have to worry about any type of flooding Or is it flat enough you have to worry about that where you're at?
It is not. That there is a small creek that is just downhill from my house, actually, and it runs year-round, mostly draining snowmelt off the mountains. But I am about 24 vertical feet above that. I actually measured it because we did some water pumping stuff. So I know I'm pretty well above that, and I'm on a hillside. For my actual location to flood the entire, I'm kind of on this side of the hill, and the valley goes across and up the other side. For it to flood at my house, the entire valley would have to be underwater, and that's virtually impossible. There can certainly be flooding in some of the low-lying areas when it kind of just depends, not so much on how deep the snow is, but how fast it warms up. If it just gets warm and stays above freezing overnight, the snow, even if there's not a ton of it, can start to melt very rapidly, and that will cause flooding. But even with this much snow, which is just a little above our average this year, if it gets warm during the day and then back below freezing at night and so on in that cycle, it kind of melts slowly, and so then you wouldn't have any flooding. So, but either way, my house is not going to be underwater.
Okay, something else that we really haven't talked about your house. How do you handle your water situation? I mean, just pour out of jugs all the time. I know that you had a video on building a ram pump. Is that something you use for fresh water out of the creek, or?
Yes, so I did build a water ram. If you're not familiar with them, look them up. They're really cool. They pump water without requiring any power or gasoline or anything. That I built to put down in that creek, and it pumps water up into my garden in the summer. If I needed to, I certainly could, but if I was going to drink the open creek water, I would want to filter it and treat it. There's a lot of wildlife, who knows who pooped in it, that kind of thing. And the property I'm on, it's a little ways from my house, so I can't run it straight to here, but has a really good well. So what I actually do for water in the house, drinking, cooking, that kind of thing, is I have a bunch of those big 7-gallon water jugs, and I just put them in the back of my van and fill them up from the well, and then fill my internal tank. And then I have water in the faucet, hot water, cold water. I've got a little propane water heater, all of that. And when it runs empty, then I have to fill it again. And I only do that about every other week. So that's not a big deal. And that's what I do for my drinking water, which also has the added benefit of then everything on my water system in the house is inside. There's no pipes or hoses or plumbing running to the outside. And since it's so cold here a lot, that is very important because I never have anything that freezes up. The whole interior of the house would have to get below freezing and freeze for my water system to freeze. So that's just not an issue. But in the summer, I don't want to carry that much water by hand if I can help it for watering the garden and such, because it can get pretty dry. And so I do, I've used both the water ram in the creek, and I've used a little gasoline powered, Honda trash pump, which is capable of pumping liquid, which has some crud in it, leaves, twigs, debris, whatever, that would gum up most normal water pumps. So I've used both of those options for pumping creek water just up the hill to water the garden. And then I know people say, oh, you have all that snow, why don't you melt it? Remember, my snow is really, really dry. So we got a really wet snowstorm for us the other day. Well, not all in one day. It was like a 3-day storm, and the mountains above me got 121 inches in that storm. And remember, this was really wet snow for us. There was 10 inches of moisture in that snow. So most of our snow is drier, and simply, again, if it was an emergency, I could certainly get snow out there and get water and drink it or whatever, but the amount of energy required to bring snow in and melt it, and bring snow in and melt it, and even then there's dirt in it and bits of pine needles, and so you want to filter it and treat it and so on, would be, I know people think that would save me work versus just filling up my jugs at a well, but it really would be so much more work, especially with a very, very dry snow here. Oh, and then people ask, why don't you just drill a well? I know some of y'all live in places where wells can be hand drilled or drilled inexpensively. I live on top of the Rocky Mountains that are made out of granite, and drilling wells is neither easy or inexpensive, and there's not even water everywhere. You may be used to living in a place where there's a water table at kind of a certain number of feet down. In the mountains, that's not necessarily the case. There often is snowmelt surface water coming down, like the creek below me, but there may be no water anywhere, for any practical depth, hundreds or thousands of feet straight down. The well that I get my water from is out a little more in the flat valley, and it's close to borderline on the edge. It's like 300 feet deep, and it's kind of on borderline edge of being able to get water. So realistically, no matter how deep I did drill a hole right where my house is, I would probably not get water.
Okay, and I think we need to just kind of clarify here. I see that Homestead Paradise is saying, so the tiny house is basically a getaway nest. And I'm going to say, no, this is your home. This is where you live.
No, we've pretty much
Well,
clarified.
I mean, it's just...
We pretty much clarified that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, people do wonder that, and I have had people who just look at one post or one video or one picture of the snowdrifts and say nobody actually lives there, but that is not true. And if you want to check out my channel, you can see lots of photos of most of or videos of most of the things I do in daily life. I have been living here full-time year-round. I mean, of course, I've gone to see a few friends and went to Doug and Stacy's conference last year, met these guys and so on, but this has been my full-time year-round sole residence for going on 5 years now. It is my full-time little nest.
Well, you are just about polar opposites from Derek at Doug and Stacy's.
Yeah. It was kind of fun to have a comparison between our two off-grid tiny houses because climate-wise, Derek and Hannah's place is, they're in a sunny, dry desert with occasional monsoon rains, and I am up high in the snowy and cold mountains where we get lots of snow, but very, very little rain. Oh, that's another water question. People ask, why don't you have a rain catchment system? It very rarely rains here. Almost all our precipitation for the entire year comes down as snow. And we may get, I think the average in the summer months is an inch or less of rain per month in the summer. So we don't get a lot of rain.
So consequently, you have to irrigate your garden, and that's the reason for the ram pump and so forth.
Yes. Some years you get more rain than other. Of course, there's always variations, but there's no reliable rainfall in the summer. And even a lot of our thunderstorms, the mountain weather tends to be brief and abrupt. So it'll pour, I mean, like cats and dogs kind of rain for 47 seconds. And then the sun will be back out, the skies will be blue, and that's that. And it didn't even really settle the dust on the ground. So, yeah, that's why I do irrigate with water from the creek too.
And I see someone is asking, when do you start your garden?
Usually by mid-May, I can plant things. That varies again a little from year to year, but usually something like that. I try to have it all planted by the 1st of June, as long as the snow is gone by then. And pretty much I start planting seeds as soon as the ground is snow-free.
How did you wind up in Wyoming?
Oh, when I was 17, one of my very good friends that I grew up with, we had both just kind of got interested in photography and that kind of thing. And neither of us had ever been west. You know, she grew up beside me in Pennsylvania. We milked cows together for her aunt and uncle. And we had seen beautiful pictures of, national parks in the West, like, the Tetons and Zion and, wherever all. And we said, we should go see this stuff sometime. And we kind of talked about it for a year or so. And we said, we need to actually make a plan and do this, or someday we'll be like grandmas sitting in wheelchairs in a nursing home and saying we should have done that when we could have. So we both took a month off of work and put about 10,000 miles on my little Toyota Corolla that we, or Toyota Camry, that we lived in, and drove to every place we had seen a pretty picture of, which was kind of a whirlwind trip. But I think I had fallen in love with the West before even coming here, just from reading books, and I've always liked the outdoors, and I've always liked hiking and such. So after that trip, I actually came out here to work. I also like to ski, and I was at the time working at a greenhouse and flower farm and produce farm, which is pretty slow in the middle of winter, even in Pennsylvania. And so I'd asked my boss if she minded if I took part of a winter to go work at a ski resort in the West. And she said, no, that's fine, as long as you promise me you're coming back. And I said, perfect, of course. I have no plans to move. And so I just applied to every major ski resort across all the Western states. And the one here in Wyoming was the first one to reply with a job offer. So I said, sure. And I came here for a few months that winter. And by the time I left, I knew I wanted to live here. So I went home and told my boss I'm here because I promised I would be back. And now I'm quitting and I'm moving for good. And that's how I got to Wyoming.
2.5 Acres is asking if you use the big 230 to 330 gallon totes for water storage to irrigate your garden.
The big ones that if you've seen some pictures that I have outside, I have one, I think that's 250 gallons and one big, 100-gallon stock tank. I do sometimes, especially if I'm using the water ram, because it pumps round the clock, but at a slow pace. It's not a gigantic stream. I use those to store the water so that then when I want to water something, I can either scoop water out with a bucket or watering can, or turn on a hose attached to one of those and water it. I think that's what you're talking about. I don't, if you meant what do I carry water to the house with to fill my internal tank, I use those like green blue 7-gallon jugs that are made for water use, because they're a size where I can still pick them up and move them and carry them and so on.
What's your favorite thing to grow in the garden?
Oh, I love vegetables, so I don't know. That's hard to say. I really like beets, really like carrots, especially all the different colors. It's fun to grow like 10 different varieties of carrots. If you haven't ever had red carrots or yellow ones or pink ones or lavender ones, you should give it a try. I do really like fresh peas. Oh, there's not many veggies I don't like. That's a hard one to answer. Garlic. Probably garlic is my single favorite. If you watch my cooking videos, you know pretty much anything I make has got lots of garlic in it. So if I had to pick one favorite, it would probably be garlic.
Can you maybe put into perspective where your area is as compared to another very popular YouTube channel that is Pure Living for Life?
They are in Idaho, and I don't know if I know exactly their location, but I am definitely a few hours from where they are, just from knowing the terrain, what it looks like around their place. It's definitely not, I do live fairly close to the Idaho border in the north end of Wyoming, but the Idaho border right there doesn't look like their place. So they're definitely a few hours from me. I'm sorry, I don't actually know specifically how far from my spot they are.
I just wondered, it seems like listening to you talk and seeing their place, it just looks seems a lot alike in my mind anyway.
Yeah, they have a mountain area too, and snow, not quite as, I don't believe it's quite as snowy and cold for quite as long as here, but certainly they have a very real winter as well. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly precisely where they are. Maybe they've said that online and I just missed it, or I'm not sure.
So that brings to mind another question here. Who is your favorite YouTube channel? And you're not allowed to say Doug and Stacy.
Well, they are actually, but I'll tell you a secret. Even though I make videos and do a YouTube channel, and there are quite a few channels that I find interesting and folks that I've met that are fascinating, like you guys and M.I. Gardner and Fit Farmer. And I mean, there's a whole bunch more. I'm blanking on names right now. I don't watch that many videos because of two things. I'd rather read. And if I can't actually physically read, I would rather listen to an audiobook than watch a video. That's just my thing. Maybe it's because I didn't grow up with a TV and I just like reading words better. And then there's the other little factor of my internet being slow. And so I use pretty much all the internet data I have available to create and upload videos and answer people's questions and stuff like that. So I mostly listen to books and don't watch YouTube channels, to be honest.
Okay, well, and that kind of leads to something else here, folks. We have really been Oh, you
don't have to hang up because of that. I have enough for stuff like this.
Well, we have certainly enjoyed learning a lot about Ariel here. I mean, fantastic individual with a how would you put it? It's just different, totally different from than the norm, I guess. And so you're kind of out there. You do the real homesteading bit. You don't do it with the livestock because of the area, but it's definitely in tune with the land. So.
And I hope to at some point live still in the mountains because I do love them, but in a maybe slightly warmer place. So I really like the cold, but I like plants that don't like the cold. So maybe a slightly warmer and less snowy place. And a lot of places, even here, if I was just a little further out in the valley and not really in the heart of the mountains, it would be possible to have things like chickens and so on without them getting eaten all the time. But here, it's just not very realistically possible. So unfortunately, I don't. I have a friend who lives a little further out in the valley, and she has chickens and ducks, so I get my eggs from her and so on. But yeah, I do what I can here, and I do love the place, and I love the wildlife. If you check out my photography, I love taking pictures of them. So there's pros and cons, but that's the trade-off at the moment.
Okay, so the phone number's up. If anybody wants to call, we're going to keep it up for just a couple more minutes here. If anybody wants to call, ask her any questions personally, just say hello, say you appreciate what she's doing and sharing it with y'all. I know that I'm sure you're going to be back at Hannibal again this year. I just kind of had this gut feeling. I know it's your busy time of season, but you'll probably arrange to be there that weekend. So we're looking forward to seeing you there anyway. Do you have?
I would very much enjoy seeing everyone, and I don't know that anyone plans like off-grid or homesteading type conferences quite in this corner of the world, because I guess there's not as many people here. Period. There's more cows in the state than humans, but not as many of them choose to live that way. So I understand why they're further away, but man, everything is a long drive from my house if I want to go somewhere. That's for sure.
Homestead Paradise, do you see yourself living where you are right now at the age of 75?
No, because not physically right in this spot, because the folks who own this ground are a little over 75 right now themselves, and I'm only 30. So I would assume that they will probably pass on sometime before that, and I have no idea what will happen to this property once that happens. I don't know what their kids will do with it. That may very well end my ability to be parked right here. But do I still see myself living in a small house and gardening and enjoying the mountains and the snow and all of that? Absolutely. And one of my goals as I hopefully settle into my own property more permanently at some point is to set things up so that I can age in place. Right now, I love snow shoveling. People are always discussing, why don't you get a snowblower? I have a whole video talking about that, and I can do it. But at some point when I'm 75 or 85 or whatever, I probably won't be able to shovel tons of snow for hours. And so I want to work over the years while I have the strength and energy, hopefully, to set up some of those things to work a little easier and with a little less manual input as I age. But yes, right. In general, the living independently, growing as much food as I can, enjoying the mountains and the outdoors, and living in a small space, yes, I do see myself doing that kind of thing forever, whether it's in this exact situation or location or somewhere else.
Grandma's So Happy Homestead is asking, how far away is the closest hospital or medical clinic?
The closest, again, is well, not tiny, but smallish hospital is in the same town as the closest grocery store. So it's about 13 miles from here. If there's a serious trauma in the area, like a lot of more rural areas, somebody would be life flighted via helicopter to the closest big trauma center is in Salt Lake, Utah, and I'm in the far northern end of Wyoming. So that's quite a drive. But yeah, if something really seriously medically went wrong to anybody in this area, not just me, it would involve a life flight to Salt Lake. But about 13 miles from a small hospital.
Are you pretty well reliant just upon cell phone, or do you also have some sort of other radio communication that you can fall back on sometimes?
I do have just a cell phone. My dad has actually done ham radio and stuff, and I can definitely see the usefulness in those skills and that setup for communication if other things went down. It's just not something I've currently made the time and set up in my life to learn and acquire the either equipment or the skills, but I think that would be cool to do at some point. So yeah, right now I have a cell phone, or my legs, I can go somewhere, or my van.
Well, and I see somebody here, the Low Cash Homestead is saying a big business here is selling airlift services for ambulance. Is that something that is sold around your area?
An airlift service for an ambulance, like a helicopter ambulance?
I'm guessing that was all that they typed here.
I don't know. I don't know if like private sellers really. There is a ambulance helicopter here. I think the hospital here owns one, and maybe Search and Rescue owns one or two. But I don't know if there's like 20 different private helicopter people that you could call and book different flights with, as far as I know, in this area.
Do you ever worry about going out and getting lost or getting swallowed up by the big outdoors?
No, I don't actually. It could happen. I mean, I don't want to be arrogant. The wilderness and nature and wildlife are all potentially things that are out of a person's control. But as far as getting lost, if I'm going somewhere, I usually take very good maps. I do know how to read a map and a compass, and I've done some. I used to actually teach teenage boys in a wilderness therapy setting where we took them on very remote backpacking trips for up to a month at a time and so on. So as part of teaching them, I had to know this stuff. And so I am familiar with orienteering and map skills and so on. Plus, I also am familiar with the general layout of all the mountains here. You know, I know if that mountain chain runs east to west or north to south, you know, so I know if I don't know exactly where I am, if I walk downhill, I will eventually end up here. Or if I walk down, I will eventually end up on this side or something like that. So no, I don't really worry about getting lost like that.
And another question that I'm sure some other people have, without getting real personal or anything, is this just you, or do you have a significant other? Are you looking for a significant other? Are you, and look at her laugh at me.
She's like she knew you were going to ask something.
If you were here earlier, you saw him walking in front of the camera. Now he's sleeping peacefully. But it's just the two of us who live here. And as I said, I do have a lot of good friends, and I've been very blessed in my life with good friends, and I do have people over here and such. But yeah, it is just me living here. I do not have a significant other, and I can't say I'm particularly looking for one. I love having good friends, and if in the course of my life I encounter somebody I really want to spend the rest of my life with and they feel the same way, I don't object at all to doing that. But I really like all the things I'm doing now, so I'm good with that too.
I agree, Mama Woods. She is cute. We're sorry, Homestead. Let's not even go into the time change. You should have seen this yesterday trying to figure. I was watching the clock constantly trying to figure out. I know it's going to change. And right
that's
there,
one of my favorite things about my setup right now, because I used to milk cows, which involved getting up at like 4:30 in the morning. I used to open restaurants for getting up at 5. And right now I love that this life is letting me be flexible enough that it doesn't matter what time my clock is ringing, I do the same stuff, whether it's light or dark or whatever, and it doesn't matter at all to me what the clock says. And that's pretty awesome. I'd like to keep that lifestyle if I can. I see someone says I'm supposed to move to Mississippi. They love people like me. Thank you. That's awesome. You know what I really don't love is heat and humidity. Pennsylvania is a lot warmer than here, and man, I know people don't know how I deal with the cold, but when it's cold, you can always bundle up or put more wood on the stove. When it is so hot and humid, guys, there's just nothing you can do but be miserable. I mean, I guess you can sit inside in air conditioning, but I don't like sitting inside. So I know all the plants I'd love to grow would be very happy in Mississippi, but I don't think I could do it.
Well, can you think anything else?
No, I'm just busy chatting with people here.
I think this is the last call for questions, and I don't see any coming through. We'll get the phone shut off. And you have any last words for anybody?
There's my surprise just walked in.
Your surprise.
My surprise just walked in.
Yes, bandana grandma just popped in. Goodness sakes, one of our mods that surprised us down in Mississippi here.
Yes, the Deep South Homestead Gathering was this past weekend, and for 2 months now, Wanda said, "There's somebody coming, but I can't tell you." What do you mean there's somebody coming, but you can't tell me? She says, "Well, I'm not allowed to tell you." Is that what this person said? Yes. So I've asked her, is it this? And she wouldn't respond. Yes, no, otherwise go jump in a lake or anything. And it never, ever dawned on me. And then Friday evening, where I'm going into our room in the hotel, and I don't have my glasses on, So I'm looking and this lady's walking towards me, and then I see she has a bandana, and she literally does wear a bandana all the time. And she had a bandana on, and it hit me right then and there. I said, "You're my surprise." Yep, that was my surprise. Yep. So bandana was there to surprise me, and Pratt Family Homestead came there to surprise Wanda and Danny. So, yep, surprise. You got it.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to seeing you again later this year, Ariel. It was a pleasure meeting you last year, and thank you so much for spending a Monday evening here with us. We've had a great time.
I'm glad it worked out. I don't know. As far as last words, I would say one of my friends, we were talking the other day, and he had wanted to do something and said, well, I thought people would think it was weird. And I was kind of like, I never really cared if somebody would think it was weird. And he was like, yeah, you don't really wait for people to give you permission to tell you something is a permissible choice in life. And I was like, yeah. And I don't think other people should either. So maybe if I would tell people that one thing, figure out what you want to do, like what you really care about. You know, what if you're on your deathbed, you're going to regret not having done. Start there and then go backwards in your life and figure out what do you have to do. I'm sure what you want is different than what I want, but what do you have to do in your life? What do you have to set up? What do you have to choose as your housing or your lifestyle or your job to make that thing possible realistically to do? And then go for it. And whoever thinks you're crazy, ignore them. I mean, lots of people think are crazy, and that's one of the awesome things about YouTube channels. You can find other people of the same brand of crazy as you, and you know, encourage each other.
Oh, you betcha. So, you betcha. We're all nuts. So, Jerry, is it good night, Gracie?
It's good night, Gracie.
Everyone have
Gracie's
a wonderful
tired.
week. Next week, hope this works. Our Homestead will be our guest. We thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful
and thank
week.
Thank you to everyone for coming tonight and this weekend.
We've
got a great community.
We have
70s saw it.
We have Tech Tuesday tomorrow night, and then Thursday we're going to do another encourage channel development. So everyone take care. Have a wonderful evening. Good night, all.
You guys all have a great night.